Well, hello and welcome to my Untitled show. I'll think of a snazzy title like Kafka Cast later. I'm just gonna start recapping last week's games. Nothing too in depth. Just look at them, and we'll start with Thursday night. Missouri played Kentucky in Lexington. And Kentucky was definitely the favorite here. They were 4-2. Missouri was 2-5. Missouri just kind of a down year. But surprisingly, Missouri came in and won 24-17. Gerald Bright had a pretty strong day, but it was Eddie Anderson who really made the difference for Missouri. He had 107 yards in that touchdown in the third quarter, which put them ahead, for good. I mean, they were already leading, but put them ahead for good. And, good win for Missouri and Kentucky. It's going to be disappointing for them, but, Navy at Colorado State. The only thing to describe this game is a snooze fest. Colorado State was 1-5, Navy was 0-7, so you weren't really expecting much from this game, but to end 5-0, that's that's just boring. Nobody really. I think half the fans left. Halfway through the first quarter. Of the 10 that showed up. Nobody's stats were good. This game was just forgetful. Since in a pattern with these Thursday night games, next game's SMU at Hawaii, out there in Honolulu, beautiful Honolulu, all the other games are in the 40s and 50s in temperature, and in Honolulu it's 81 degrees, so, the players just like to get away there. This one was only interesting because Hawaii picked up their first win of the season, 28-17. Stephen Wilkinson had a good day for SMU, 234 yards. Did have that pick, but, another thing about this game is Alvin Robinson, the wide receiver for Hawaii, had a 34-yard completion, throwing the ball, to go along with his 93 yards receiving. So, kind of interesting, but again, not that really great of a game. Next game is Army at Cincinnati. Another game where combined the teams have one win. Just Army picked up their second win. Cincinnati falls to 0-7. Disappointing for Cincinnati at home. You had to think they thought they had a chance. With Army only being 1-6, but when your Army's quarterback put up 307 yards on them, they didn't really have a choice. Although he did have 2 interceptions, so they were definitely in the game. But you never know. Cincinnati. Look, there's 2 wins combined between these two teams. Georgia State, ECU. And surprisingly, ECU won 35-0. Thought it'd be a little closer than that, but I'm just gonna skip through these games just with scores because they're so boring. BYU beat Houston 16-14 to get to 500 on the year. Houston was definitely the favorite in this game, but BYU pulled out not a big upset, but a little upset. Next game, Illinois at Northwestern. In Illinois, but Northwestern walked away with a 38-3 victory. It was 21-3 at the end of the first quarter, 35-3 at the end of the first half. So Illinois was never really in this game. Auburn at Iowa State. This game, I thought it'd be a little closer. Not surprised Auburn won, but I thought it'd be a little closer. And finally, Virginia at Miami. This one was a pretty big upset. Virginia's coach has been talking all week about how he thought that he was going to win the Coastal Division, and personally, I'd just been kind of laughing that off. He was 2-4, but with his this upset of Miami, they've definitely put themselves back in the race, especially with my embarrassing loss to Duke, which we'll get to in a few minutes. Virginia's definitely put themselves back in the running for the Coastal Division. And Miami, just kind of what happened here. They were sitting pretty. They had, I think, one conference loss, but they were still sitting pretty good for a chance. But this loss to Virginia is not pretty, and not pretty at all. So now let's go to the morning games, where the first game of the morning was Tennessee at Alabama. This game wasn't really close. I mean, it's what you'd expect. Alabama's the number 2 team in the nation. Some people think they should be number 1. 24-7. Erasmus McCready had 165 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Bobby Given had 106 yards and a touchdown. It was never that close. It was 17-0 Alabama before Aikman threw his touchdown pass to make it 17-7, but then Alabama answered back in the third quarter, made it 24-7. So pretty much what you'd expect there. Wisconsin at Purdue, another one of the undefeateds. Wisconsin. This game was much closer than I thought it would be. I thought Wisconsin would win pretty easily. But, this was a game, it was tied at the end of the third quarter, and it was tied all the way till 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter when Wisconsin finally got a touchdown to break the tie to win 28-21. Purdue had a good showing here. I honestly didn't expect this game to be this close, and you got to feel good in Purdue with that showing. It's a loss, but you had to feel good with how that game went. The Florida State-Louisville game is next. Louisville's just in free fall this year. They're 0-8 now, and really no end in sight. Whereas FSU, continues to bounce back from that loss earlier this year. They're 6-1. They won 21-3 here. Probably should have won this game by more than 19 points, or 18 points. But a win's a win. Thomas Wheeler, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 228 yards. Akili Wallace, another touchdown. Should have won the game by more, but a win's a win, so that's all that really matters. Georgia at South Carolina. These 2 teams are pretty polar opposites. Georgia's moving on up in all the polls and everybody's minds. In South Carolina, another team, not quite as bad as Louisville, but another team definitely on the downturn. Georgia took care of business 28-10. Sam Marmer, another great game, 264 yards, 2 touchdowns. Aaron Shaw didn't have a bad game for South Carolina. He was 20-43, so he completed less than half the passes. But he didn't have an interception. So, it's not a great day, but by no means is it a horrible day. He definitely kept his team in the game. And, Frank Barrett had his rushing touchdown, which was South Carolina's only touchdown. But, South Carolina definitely kept themselves in the game. But, Georgia was just too much. Georgia's a great team, Kind of pains me to say it as a Georgia Tech fan, but they've definitely got a great year going. Next game, Arkansas at Ole Miss, another undefeated team in Ole Miss. They took care of business at home against Arkansas, 28-7. Lamore, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 194 yards, just continuing his great season. This game was more about Ole Miss, they just got the pedal to the metal. 324 yards from your quarterback, you're going to have a pretty good day. Nothing shocking. They did have 4 sacks at least, 2 for Kenyatta Henderson and 2 for Cleveland Merrill, which is you definitely want Taylor Hayden to be watching his back every time he drops back to pass. Oh wait, excuse me, I was looking at Arkansas when I said 324 yards. It's interesting he had that many passing yards considering he was sacked 4 times. But Ole Miss gave up 324 yards passing, but only 7 points. So their defense, clamped down every time they got into the red zone. Florida at Vanderbilt. Here was a big upset. Vanderbilt knocked off Florida 2017. Florida number 18 in the nation, 5-2. Vanderbilt was 2-4. But Herman Williams came out, completed well over half his passes for 184 yards and a touchdown, and Charlie Hill ran for 100 more yards and another touchdown. I mean, that's the way you win the games. Just keep on getting that kind of production from your offense. West Virginia at number 16, Kansas. This game went to overtime. Kansas pulled out the 24-21 victory. James Otero has been having a whale of a year, but West Virginia shut him down. He only had 17 carries for only 75 yards and one touchdown. Kansas has been relying on the running game this year, and when it got shut down, it showed here with going into overtime and barely beating a 1-5 West Virginia team. The storyline of this game is Gary Baldacci. He is 29 for 39 for 408 yards and two touchdowns. That's why West Virginia came close to pulling out this upset, was a game like that from their quarterback. NC State and Clemson. NC State pulled out the victory here between two substellar teams in the ACC. Nothing really flashy about this game or anything, just solid win for NC State, trying to get to that 500 mark, maybe get bowl eligible. You never know with their schedule, but definitely a hit for Clemson, who was at 500, trying to get bowl eligible. Final game of the morning was Duke at Georgia Tech. And, well, guys, this game was embarrassing. All I can really say about it is don't scheme change, okay? Just don't. On paper, I should have crushed them, but, well, you can just see for yourself. Duke won 35-17. The two picks are what really hurt us, hurt Georgia Tech. One was late in the third quarter, and one opened up the scoring. Less than 30 seconds into the game, Eric Carroll had an interception return for a touchdown that just opened up the scoring, and Duke was up 21-0, and then 28-7 at halftime. So they were up by 21 at halftime, and then it looked like Georgia Tech might be coming back. They were only down 28-17, and had just got an interception from Sadiq Paschal. And then Tom Sinclair threw his second touchdown of the game, effectively ending the comeback for Georgia Tech. And just don't scheme change, guys. Just don't scheme change. Now let's go to the Saturday afternoon games. First game was Boston College at Notre Dame. Boston College was number 23. Notre Dame was number 14. I thought this game would be a little closer, but Notre Dame took care of business, 23-7. Nothing that was really flashy about Notre Dame's stats. It was a nice, solid team effort. In fact, the best day for anybody stat-wise was Boston College's quarterback, Julian Webster. He was a 20-43 for 223 yards and a touchdown. But like I said, just a nice, solid team win for Notre Dame. I'd like to point out, or just something to notice, Michael Turner missed his first field goal of the year. And, he's kind of in that race with Brad Weathersby on, who's the best quarterback right now. So now they both missed one on the year. Indiana at Michigan. Another big upset here. 1-5 Indiana Hoosiers took down the 5-2 Michigan Wolverines. Kamal Davis had a heck of a game. Career day. He was 22 for 33 for 300 yards and four touchdowns. Um, Another big day was Indiana's defense as a whole. They picked off Tommy Jones 3 times. Um, yeah, just a good win for Indiana. LDO's got to be feeling good about that one. Um, yeah, just a good win for Indiana. Next game is Maryland at Penn State. Penn State took care of business. It was pretty close. Maryland was winning 21-10 in the third quarter and 21-20 late in the fourth quarter, but with 6 minutes left, Penn State got the field goal to go up 23-21 and ended up winning. Jose Kirkpatrick was the one leading this Maryland charge. He had 294 yards and 3 touchdowns. But it was Keith Dunn for Penn State. No, I think there might be an error with the stats here. I don't know if anybody else has noticed it because it has 2 Penn State running backs listed, but no Maryland running backs, unless Maryland just didn't run the ball, which seems a little unlikely. Yeah, pulled out the win over Maryland. It was a win's a win, but it would have been nice after losing last week for Penn State to come out and done a little better against Maryland. Next game was Mississippi State versus Texas A&M, another upset. There were a lot of upsets last week. A lot of teams thought they were going into their wins and didn't end up winning. Mississippi State lost 13-7 in College Station. Texas A&M had that running attack. They didn't put up a lot of yards, but they just kind of chugged away, and that's where Texas A&M's only touchdown came from, was the running game. Just bruising inside in the red zone. But yeah, 13-7 Texas A&M in College Station. This was a good game. It wasn't very close, but it was still a good game. Oklahoma State ended up beating Texas Tech 28-7. It was just kind of both teams were kind of airing it out, but also Texas Tech put down 118 rushing yards with Sean Evans. But Booker T. Washington had more touchdowns for Oklahoma State. Both teams, like I said, this is just if you just like the fundamentals of football, it was clean, it was good, it was just a good game. There weren't a lot of errors, there wasn't any, dirty plays. It was just a lot better. A good game. Okay, and now North Carolina and Virginia Tech. This was a big game in the ACC Coastal. It's one of the most open divisions right now in football, and North Carolina took down Virginia Tech 24-21. A.J. Jefferson had 384 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. However, he was shown up by Blake Shell for Virginia Tech, who had 411 yards and 3 touchdowns in the loss. This was it's kind of a shootout, lots of yards put up, not all that many points, but a lot of yards were put up. And North Carolina, they have a couple losses, but they're still very much alive in the ACC Coastal. It's just a very open division right now. And Pitt at Syracuse. This was by far the shootout. Pitt came in 3-3, Syracuse 0-6, but they ended up 41-38 for Pitt in overtime. There were just some ridiculous numbers thrown up by Nick Hall, 518 yards for 4 touchdowns and an interception. Usually in a game that goes into overtime, it's a shootout like this, you see inflated stats for everybody, but the rushing numbers for both teams were actually quite tame, just 12 for 54 and a touchdown for Syracuse and 7 for 34 and a touchdown for Pitt. But both teams had over 300 yards passing and 4 touchdowns passing, so that's where the shootout came from. And we got 2 more. The Wake Forest at Rutgers. These are both teams that I don't know really how to put it. They aren't powerhouses. They weren't even expected to be great at the beginning of the season, but both have put together a pretty nice season so far. Rutgers got better. They're 6-1 now. weeks, and they lost, but I mean, it was close. It was only 14-0. It was a kind of a snooze fest. I mean, it was clean. There were no turnovers. It was just 14-0. But both teams had solid days stats wise. Obviously Rutgers came out on top 14-0 to improve to 6-1, and I know moved up in quite a few people's polls. Final game was Kansas State at Baylor. Baylor pulled out the 35-7 win, as was expected from them. They're 5-3. I know they've been getting some love in the polls after this win. Joshua Andrews had a great day, 33 for 46 for 395 yards, 5 touchdowns. So he did have 2 interceptions, but 5 touchdowns. It's okay to have 2 interceptions as long as you win. Other than that, I mean, Baylor kind of dominated this game. It doesn't look like it score-wise as much. I mean, they only won by 28, but they pretty much dominated this game. Now to move to the night games, or as Selena called them, evening games this week. Well, there's quite a few interesting things. We'll start here. Boise State 7-0 taking on Oregon at home 2-4. There was some question about this game since Brian Brown was hurt and wouldn't be starting, and Steve Bowers was starting instead. Could Oregon pull off the upset and knock off Boise State for the first time this season? There's been a lot of critics of Boise not thinking they should be number 1, not even that highly ranked. I've been one of them, and while I certainly still don't believe they should be number 1, they definitely put a lot of my concerns to rest with this win. No Brian Brown, so it had to be more of a team effort, and they answered. They beat Oregon 41-14. I definitely think if Brian Brown had been playing, this would have been much more lopsided. However, they took care of business without Brian Brown. Steve Bowers had a pretty good day. I mean, he completed less than half of his passes, but he had 194 yards and 3 touchdowns, only 1 interception. But they took care of business without Brian Brown, so they're definitely a good team. Okay, Oklahoma at TCU. Oklahoma definitely a favorite. They're number 15, 4-2. TCU's only 1-6. However, I know Danger really thought his team had a chance in this game, and honestly, I kind of thought they might too. They got tied in the first quarter, tied at halftime, but then in the third quarter, Oklahoma opened it up on them and ended up winning 42-21. Interesting, this game in the fourth quarter, Robert Price dropped back the pass. He threw the ball. Rayleigh Koya, one of TCU's better defensive players, outside linebacker, intercepted it. Okay, he was running the ball back. And he was running it back, and he was actually making pretty good progress down the field. Ty Miller, one of Oklahoma's star wide receivers, tackled him. Not sure what happened. They kind of got tangled up. Both players broke their arms and are out for the season. And the fumble went on to be recovered by Russ Martin, so the turnover was negated for TCU, but both players out for the season. In fact, TCU also lost another linebacker that was just out for the rest of the game. Everybody talks about the pipe. It was definitely out for some blood in this game. And both players broke their arms against each other. Okay, the next game, Ohio State at Iowa. Ohio State was 6-1. Iowa was 5-2. However, nobody really was giving Iowa a chance in this game. However, Iowa came out. They were up 17-7 at halftime, 20-14 in the third quarter. But Namondi Brown kicked a game-winning field goal for Ohio State as time expired, and sealed the deal for Ohio State. This was very close to another upset for this week. Jarius Jones, though, for Iowa, 24 for 41, 335 yards and 2 touchdowns. A very impressive game for him. He's the reason his team was doing so good in this game and almost pulled off the upset. Now, Minnesota at Nebraska. In my mind, this was the game of the week. It was they're number 12 and number 9 respectively in the nation. However, in The RPI, they are number 1 and number 2. Um, they are. They came out. It was 7-3 Nebraska at the end of the first quarter, 13-3 Nebraska at the end of the second quarter, and Minnesota tried to come back late in the fourth quarter, but it was just the deficit was too much, and Nebraska won 16-10. O.J. Carano from Minnesota had a pretty good game, 105 yards and a touchdown. But it was Pat Bostic for Nebraska, that led his team to victory. He had 254 passing yards and a touchdown. This was really the game of the week. In my opinion, just a great game. The next game was Arizona State at LSU. LSU was coachless after this game, or for this game. The whole scandal that went down last week. So some people were giving Arizona State a shot at this. They're only 5-1, 22 in the nation. So but I think Louisiana State just proved how good they were. They came out and just drubbed Arizona State 42-0. And there's not much to talk about that. LSU dominated every facet of the game, and Arizona State never really had a chance. Okay, California at Washington. Not really sure why this game was giving a Saturday night game. California was 1-5, Washington 2-4. I mean, they put up a good game. It ended up 31-21 Washington, but I mean, honestly, not much. Both teams are not very good. Honestly, no offense. Okay, Washington State at Oregon State. This game, Oregon State pretty much dominated, 28-0. They're kind of moving on up. They're 24 in the nation, moving on up this week. Okay, UCLA at Utah. Another kind of snoozer. I mean, UCLA won 24-17 to get above 500, and Utah fell to 2-5. And finally, Colorado at Arizona. Colorado upset Arizona. Not that it was much of an upset, but it was still an upset. 28-24 to move to 3-5, and Arizona fell to 500. And that wraps up the college football portion of the recaps. Let's just take a look at next week's games. I'll just quickly move through them and kind of tell you what I think on these. Thursday night, Cincinnati at Georgia State. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think both teams are winless. I think Cincinnati picks up their first win of the season. Georgia State, just not a very good team. Even though they have a coach, still just, no matter how good of a coach you are, you can't coach those players into winning. Hawaii at Colorado State. I'm taking Hawaii. SMU at Kansas State. I am taking SMU. Just got a coach, so maybe SMU's coach will get a win in his first game. I'm going to take them. ECU at South Carolina. I'm taking South Carolina. Maryland at Rice. I'm going to go Rice. Washington at Stanford. I'm going to take Washington. Houston at Central Florida. I'm taking Houston. Oregon at California. I'm taking Oregon. Arizona at Washington State. I'm going with Neo in Arizona. Saturday morning, we have Air Force at Army. I'm going to go Air Force and Discreto. Clemson at Louisville. I'm taking Clemson. Syracuse at Wake Forest. I'm taking Wake Forest. Virginia at Duke. I'm taking Duke. I think Virginia gets beat here and is out of the coastal race. Minnesota at Northwestern. I'm taking Minnesota. Kansas at Navy. I'm taking Kansas. West Virginia at Oklahoma State. I'm taking Oklahoma State. Kentucky at Georgia. I'm going with Georgia. And FSU at NC State. I'm taking FSU. Saturday afternoon games. Texas A&M at Auburn. I'm going A&M. Virginia Tech at Georgia Tech. I'm taking Georgia Tech. Purdue at Iowa. I'm going to pick Iowa. However, I'm placing them on upset alert. I think Purdue might get the upset here. Penn State at Indiana. Again, I'm going to pick Penn State. But Indiana can get it done, as they proved this week. So I'm placing Penn State on upset alert. Oklahoma at Iowa State, I'm going with Oklahoma. Arkansas, Mississippi State, I'm going Mississippi State. Nebraska at Illinois, I'm taking Nebraska. At San Diego State at Boise State, I'm taking Boise. And Miami at Pittsburgh, I'm taking Miami. Okay, in the night games, UCLA to Arizona State, I'm taking Arizona State. Colorado at Oregon State, I'm going Oregon State. Tennessee at Notre Dame, I'm taking Notre Dame. Vanderbilt at Ole Miss, I'm taking Ole Miss. Utah at USC, I'm taking USC. Texas at TCU, I'm taking Texas. Wisconsin at Rutgers. I'm going to take Rutgers. I think they get it done against Wisconsin, give Wisconsin its first loss. LSU at Alabama. I think I'm going to take Alabama. I think they get it done and prove that they are kind of deserving of the first place votes they're getting. And Ohio State at Michigan State. I think Ohio State wins rather handedly. Michigan State has a very easy strength of schedule, and I think that comes to bite them here, is I don't think they're quite worthy of their number 8 ranking that they have right now. Okay, and after... Okay, now let's move into the NFL portion of the show. Let's look at the games real quick from last week. Week number 5, Thursday night. Green Bay and Minnesota were playing. Both teams were 2-2. Minnesota won 31-21. Jason Johnson had a very good game for Green Bay. He was 20 for 24 for 278 yards, 3 touchdowns and interception. And Brian Vardell from Minnesota was 16-21 for 194 yards and 2 touchdowns. But both quarterbacks had really good days. But Brian Vardell led his team to victory, where Jason Johnson could not. Okay, now let's move to the regular Sunday games. Dallas at Miami. Dallas was 1-3, Miami 2-2. Miami won this game rather handedly, 31-7. Will Thompson was 17 of 25 for 274 yards and 2 touchdowns. And as they won rather handedly. Jacksonville at New England. New England won 24-14 to move to 4-1. And that was, both quarterbacks had solid days, Kareem Taylor and Darren Warner. The New York Jets 3-1 at Detroit Lions 1-3. This game, New York won 23-10. It's interesting because the Detroit Lions were almost unanimous Super Bowl favorites for the season. They're sitting at 1-4. If they don't turn it around pretty soon, they're in danger of not even making the playoffs. The St. Louis Rams at Indianapolis Colts. St. Louis blew out Indianapolis. Indianapolis is 0-5. It was 42-7. Darrell Murphy, 20-25 for 354 yards and 4 touchdowns. Throwing to Walt Peck, although Walt Peck only had 93 of the yards. That Murphy to Peck connection is a very, very potent one. Okay, Cleveland at Cincinnati. Cincinnati pulled out the win 14-10, then move up to 2-3, as is Cleveland, and they are division opponents. New Battles threw his first touchdown of his career in this game to go along with his 70 yards. And Rob Blackman had 147 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Carolina 0-4, Falcons 4-0. Falcons won 31-14. They're kind of the opposites of the NFC South. Atlanta 5-0, Carolina 0-5. Skaggs had a good day, although without the team around him, he's 0-5. He also had 2 interceptions. Let's move to the Monday night game. Monday night, the Saints played the Raiders. New Orleans pulled out the victory 38-34. It was a shootout. The pipe that everybody talks about definitely struck in this game. They had 5 combined injuries. Alan Taylor went down in looks like the third quarter probably. He out for 4 more games. He had a great game going when he went out. He completed half of his passes for 156 yards and 2 touchdowns. Adolfo Brown took over afterwards and was just 3 for 9 for 28 yards. Alan Taylor also had 74 rushing yards and a touchdown when he went out. Carlos Freitas, defensive tackle for the Oakland Raiders, went out. He's out for the season. Greg Newman, wide receiver for New Orleans, was out just for this game. Kevin Hasselbeck, cornerback, New Orleans, was out for this game. And Michael Banks, fullback for Oakland, will be out for 1 game. In the stats on this game, there's lots more players than you're used to seeing because so many players went out with injury and had to be replaced. But New Orleans pulled out the victory, 38-34. That's gonna wrap up tonight's show. When I post this, I'll ask for comments and what I could do to make it better. This was my first try, literally just by the seat of my pants. I thought, I'm actually going to do the radio show I always talk about and never do. So let me know what y'all think about it. In the next couple weeks, I'll be more prepared. I know I want to add in a talking about the rankings and talking about maybe some conference and division pictures. Who's going to win what division, who's going to win that conference, and playoff picture. All those for the NFL and college. But this week I was just kind of going by the seat of my pants, so I did not do those, but I plan to in the next couple weeks. So let me know questions, comments, concerns. Just let me know if any of you watch this. I bet nobody even makes it this far. In fact, you know what? If you're still watching, I want you to comment in the forum on the video. Just say paperweight. Okay, just comment just that word. Nothing else. Just so I can see if anybody actually got to this point. Which I seriously doubt. Okay, so that's going to wrap it up. And just remember, go Tech and to hell with Georgia.